In this video, we will discuss how to manage request routing with examples. The router component enables routing to Razor components in a Blazor app. The router component is used in the app component of Blazor apps. First, let's see the app component. This is the router component, and it is one of the most important components in the Blazor apps. Now, let's see router component in details. There are other components inside the router components. For example, found component, not found component, and the layout view, etc. When a Razor component with an add page directive is compiled, the generated component class is provided a route attribute specifying the component's route template. Meaning, if a component have page directive and it is compiled, that component will have route attribute specifying the component's route template, namely a segment in the URL to access this component. When the app starts, the assembly specified as the router's app assembly is scanned to gather route information for the app's components that have a route attribute. Namely, first the component is compiled, will have route attribute, then app assembly will gather all route information. At runtime, the route view component receives the route data from the router along with any parameters. In addition, inside the route view component, we have a default layout attribute. In the default layout attribute, we are assigning main layout. Namely, the main layout is the default layout of this application. If we have a component and it doesn't have a layout directive, at that time, the main layout is the default layout for that component. However, Blazor project templates specify the main layout component as the app's default layout. In Blazor, components support multiple route templates using multiple add page directives. Now, let's create an example route component to show multiple page directives in a single Blazor component. In general, components resides inside the pages folder, therefore I will create that example route component inside the pages folder. Now, inside this example route component, I am going to add two route templates, namely now I have added two different route templates inside this single example route component. In order to save time, I have prepared the HTML code portion of this component. Therefore, I just copy it and paste it here first. This is the HTML code for that component. Just copy it. First, clear this, paste it here. Save it. Now I have completed the component with two different route templates. Namely, in Blazor, components support multiple route templates using multiple page directives. We have multiple page directives here. Meaning, this example component loads on request for first example route 1, then example route 2 as well. Now let's try to run this application, and I'm going to access the same page with using these two different route templates. Actually, this application is running behind the scene. Therefore, if I save something and update something and save it, it will be updated automatically. Now let's see the page. Okay, I refresh it. The application is running. Now I am trying to access the newly created example route component by using the different route templates we just added. For example, example route 1 and the example route 2. Let's do that. First, let's try the example route 1. Okay, the example route 1 template loads the page. At present, this component is displaying, for example, route 1. Now, I am going to try 2. If I enter here 2, okay, I have accessed the same page by using the second route template, namely example route 2. If I change it 1 again, okay, now let's try to access it. Okay, the same page loads again. In this example component, we have used 2 different route templates. The first one is example route 1. The second one is example route 2. We have accessed the same page by using these 2 route templates. In summary, components support multiple route templates using multiple add page directives. We have multiple add page directives inside this example route component. Therefore, this component has been accessed by using these 2 different route templates. Now, let's see router parameter by using another example. The router uses route parameters to populate the corresponding component parameters with the same name. Route parameter names are in-case sensitive. Now, let's create the route param component. Now I have created an example route param component. By using this component, I am going to show route parameters. Okay, I have created info property. This is a component property. However, we have a route template here. Inside the route template, we have a route parameter here. Now I have completed this simple component. Save it. This route parameter has corresponding component property here. This is the corresponding component property for this route parameter. Therefore, by using this route parameter, we can populate corresponding component property. Just display this info in here. Therefore, when we enter the browser in the info as a value, and it will be show up here. Therefore, in the application, Blazor WebAssembly works with all modern web browsers. Okay, now let's try it and call this component by using this route template. Okay, let's see it, and it displays here, and therefore Blazor WebAssembly works with all modern web browser. This is the value of the route parameter, and it populates the corresponding component property. In addition, in Blazor applications, optional route parameter also supported. For example, after the info, and this info route parameter will become optional. And then here, we create one initialize method, for example, protected. Now let's save it. Route parameter supports optional parameters. Namely, Blazor app supports optional route parameters. Now the info is optional route parameter. We have an initialize method. If the value of the info is not present, and it will be display this default value. Let's try this component. We see here browser. Now this browser comes from the default value. That browser comes from here, namely the default value, because it's optional. Therefore, we may assign it value or we may not assign it value. If we assign it value, it will be displayed directly here. If we don't assign it value, it will be show the default value. Now let's see route constraints in Blazor apps. For this, I will create a user component. Save this. And we have added route template here. Inside the route template, we have ID, and this ID is integer. Actually, this is the route constraint portion of this URL, of this route template. In fact, route constraints enforces type checking in the URL. In other words, route constraints enforces type checking in the route template. Therefore, the route parameter ID only accepts integer values. If it is not integer, it won't work. Let's try to see it. Now the application is running. Based on this, I am going to enter user ID. I will give the ID 1, for example. Therefore, I will enter user/1. User/1. Now the ID. Now the template parameter ID is equal to 1. Namely, the ID equal to 1 and integer. Therefore, it should work. It should display user ID 1. Okay, it works. It displays user ID 1. This is the user component, and it works for user ID 1. Its type is integer. Therefore, it worked. If I enter here a string, it won't work. Now, I have entered a string 1. Namely, I assigned the ID of the user a string. It won't work. Okay, it won't work. Sorry, there is nothing at this address. Now, I try to give 100. It will be show up user ID 100. User ID 100. For example, it will work. Therefore, a route constraint enforces type checking on a route segment to a component. Now, let's see some invariant culture matching, because this is related to route constraints. Constraints enforces type checking in the URL. Therefore, you may see that what element is have invariant culture and the type checking is matched or not matched. Thank you for your watching. Please subscribe.